everybody. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us online tonight. In response to the recent killings of Rayshard Brooks, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McTade, Ahmaud Arbery, and the unrest affecting our community and the world, the Engineering Diversity and Inclusion Council of the School of Engineering at Santa Clara University presents to the community a panel series featuring guests, STEM leaders, titled Walking the Walk Together. With this panel, we want to support our community and our nation around social justice and fighting racism. We hope to start conversations around allyship cross-culturally. This includes informing people who want to learn more about understanding their privilege and how to leverage it in allyship, as well as turning our understanding into actionable steps. My name is Daniel Mendoza, and I'm an incoming senior from Thousand Oaks, California. I'm studying electrical engineering, and I'm one of the two co-presidents for the Santa Clara chapter of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, SHIP for short, and I'll be your main moderator for the night. There's a couple house rules I want to go over. For our Santa Clara students watching live on Zoom, please keep your video and microphone off. But the chat room is open for your questions, and I invite you to please utilize it to ask our wonderful panelists all the questions you may have. We'll make sure to answer them for you. We'll ask them for you, sorry. And then for everyone watching on our live stream across the world, there's a Google form on the webpage for you to submit any questions throughout the event as well, and we'll also make sure to answer those questions. Before we move on to the panel discussion, I just want to introduce my friends and fellow moderators, Darren Brown, Christian Jimenez, and Charles Ju. So Darren, why don't you start us off?
Hi everyone, so my name is Darren Brown and I'm a rising junior at SCU and I'm from Henderson, Nevada. I'm currently studying bioengineering and I'm a member of the SCU chapter of the National Society of Black Engineers, also known as NSBE. So I'll be moderating the live stream chat, and so as soon as we start the panel discussion, if you're watching on the live stream, direct all your questions using our Google form, and feel free to ask any questions that are directly related to what we're discussing or any additional ones that you have.
Christian, go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Christian. I'm a senior biochemistry student and I represent the Student Academic Representatives, also known as STAR. And today I will be moderating the Zoom chat, so as we enter the panel discussion, please ask all questions in the chat or the Google form and we'll try to get through as many as we can.
Thanks, Christian. And then Charles.
Hi everyone, my name is Charles Ju. I'm a rising senior from Toronto, Canada. I'm studying electrical and computer engineering at Santa Clara. I'm currently the president of the SU chapter of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IEEE. I'm also a member in our Diversity and Inclusion Council, helping to bring voices that don't necessarily participate in our diversity organizations and clubs. I will be the background support for this panel discussion, and I will be one of the moderators in our small groups discussions later.
Great, thanks, Charles. And just to emphasize, please feel free to throw any questions you may have in the chat or into the Google form, and we'll get as many of them as we can. And with that, I'd love to introduce our guest panelists. We are honored to have 4 panelists with us for a panel today, all prominent influencers and leaders in STEM. Panelists, as I say your name, it would be great if you could also tell the audience a little bit about who you are, and I'll give you a brief introduction as well. So let's start with Julia Price, Good Morning America featured songwriter who built a personal online presence and community with over 470,000 followers across multiple platforms. She has a combined background of journalism, media couching, writing, and songwriting. Her unique skill set in storytelling ranges from digital to in-person events. So Julia, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, great. Had some fun technical things already, but you all seem like the right people to handle those things. Everyone's so smart. I'm blown away by all of you already. Yeah, it's great to be here. I don't know what else to say. That was a great introduction, so thank you. And I'm hoping to, this is something that I take very seriously, this conversation, and I'm hoping to provide whatever insight I have that I can help, and also really here to listen as well. Very much student and the teacher, as we all are. So excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thanks, Julia. Up next, we have Maynard Okereke.
Hi, how's it going, everybody? I thought you were gonna do an intro for me too, so I was waiting. But
I was. I'm sorry. My bad.
It's okay. I can introduce myself. It's not a problem.
All right. You definitely can handle it better than I can.
Hi, everybody. My name is Maynard Okereke. My background is in civil environmental engineering, focused on structural engineering. I know we have many engineers here. I currently work right now as a science communicator. I started a platform called Hip Hop Science, which really uses music, entertainment, hip hop, pop culture as tools to be able to educate people on various scientific subjects. So I touch on everything from physics to biology to natural sciences, space exploration, do sit-down interviews, podcasts, and then speaking engagements. And I work with after-school programs, and I work with organizations and communities and companies as well too, on ways that we can be more inclusionary, especially as far as getting more representation in Black voices in STEM fields. Excited to be a part of this panel, excited to be able to lend my voice and my knowledge and my background and different things that I've faced as an African-American person within the science fields, and I'm looking forward to be able to give you guys some useful takeaways today. So thank you for having me.
Great, thanks, Maynard. And next, we'll be introducing Kareth Burke. And I'll go back to doing the introduction for you, but if I miss anything, please feel free to add on anything. So Kareth is a sports anchor and reporter with more than a decade of experience covering the nation's best teams. She currently works for NBC Sports Bay Area as the Golden State Warriors courtside reporter and co-host of the Run and Plays podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me. Glad I'm not on mute. Yeah, I think I have the best job in the world. I cover the best athletes on the planet. And as those athletes discover their power and as they feel empowered to speak out on things, I want to be a part of that too. I mean, you have to recognize the platform that you have and the obligation you have to speak about the right things. So thank you for having me on this panel. I'm really honored to be here.
Thanks, Kareth. And finally, we have Sydel Curry-Lee, who is an entrepreneur, tastemaker, and athlete. After considering her own mental and physical health, Sydel invested herself in another passion, psychology. She has made a transition back into the social media space where she is developing her own lifestyle brand encompassing family, faith, food, mental health, and more. So Sydel, go ahead and hit anything I missed.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. As everyone else has said, I feel super honored to be here and to kind of share my thoughts and my views with you guys. You basically hit everything, Daniel. My whole platform is really just advocating for mental health and starting the conversation and changing the stigma around it. That's kind of what my passion in life is, along with psychology. It's just one thing that's keeping me moving every day. So yeah, I'm excited to answer some questions and to also learn. I think a lot of these, I just feel honored to be here because I learned so much from so many people as well. Because, you know, in all of this, we're finding out new things every day and new ways to be allies for not only ourselves, but for everyone else. So yeah.
Okay, great. Let's get started with some questions. We'll go ahead and dive in. And they're really for anyone. Panelists, don't feel obligated to respond to each question, but feel free to jump in if you're interested in answering. So we'll start off asking, what obstacles did you face and overcome in your journey to where you are now?
I guess I'll start off. So that's a lot to unpack within that. Like I said earlier, my background is in civil and environmental engineering, and I went to school at the University of Washington in Seattle. It's my alma mater, go Huskies. But for me, and especially as a Black person entering the science fields, I would say the most difficult part was one, feeling welcomed and feeling that that was a field that I can actually be a part of. My interest in going into the sciences was really observatory based. It was what I saw on TV. You know, I grew up on Bill Nye and, Magic School Bus and all these different things that were implemented as far as driving interest in science. And I was just a curious kid. I love to explore wildlife around me and go to ponds and catch frogs and snakes. And to me, it was just something that I thought was cool. It was something that I found interesting, and I wanted to learn more about the world around me. And for me, I was just uniquely driven in a way to be able to explore that path and really to be able to drive my interests. And I originally went to school hoping to be a wildlife biologist. And as I got into school, I started to connect with a lot of different peers and people that are going to the engineering field. And I started to learn more about engineering. And I'd always been big into Legos and building things and design, and it was a way to be able to encompass my love for science and then also construction and design elements. And so engineering ended up being the kind of perfect niche for me. But it was difficult because, I went to a school that was predominantly white. We probably were about 3 or 4% Black people at our school. And then also not having representation. I didn't grow up with mentors or other scientists. I didn't have anybody in my family that was in the sciences. I was first generation here. I'm half Nigerian, half Cameroonian. So that was another challenge dealing with my transition here as well too, because even though I was born in the States, I was raised overseas in West Africa for 5 years before I came back to the US. And so as second generation here, first generation here in the country, I had some challenges that I was facing as well too within that. But for me, it really helped once I got into school and I started to be able to integrate around with more peers and people that looked like me within the fields. I was obviously involved in platforms like NSBE, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are here, National Society of Black Engineers. And for me, that was a great opportunity to be able to fully engage and immerse myself with a community of people that look like me and have the same passion and the same drive as me. And that was one of the things that definitely fueled me to stay within the sciences and to keep at it and to know that there would be opportunities for me. And then as I left and got into professional environments, it was really my drive and curiosity and self-assurance that I knew what I wanted to do and knew exactly what my message and my voice was to be able to stay engaged within that. But there are a lot of complexities that everybody deals with, and I'm sure that each of the panelists have different experiences, and I think that's what makes an event like this really unique, because we all come at it from different platforms, different backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, different origins, social, political, economic backgrounds. And for me, it was really just that identification of knowing what I wanted early on, and then being able to find people that look like me as peers that really helped me stay invested in what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I'll go next. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's really interesting. So I started as a woman in media, and a lot of my sort of mentors were men, which in a lot of ways I feel really grateful for. But I remember trying to, bond with some of the female anchors or female producers, and there just seemed to be like a little bit of competitiveness. And I know it's actually a very different time. So this was about, I want to say 2009 or so. And, I watched my mom growing up as the first female producer at a station, and she, kind of ran the show. And she was constantly having to kind of prove herself, and she had mentored this one kid at the time. He was a kid, and then he ended up getting promoted over her, and she asked the boss why, and he said, well, you have kids. My mom's like, I've never missed a day of work for my kids, ever. And so there was that sort of, I remember growing up in the studio seeing that. And then as I, again, older, it's like I wanted more women to look up to, and I would seek them out, and sort of, eventually I did find that, especially as times started to change. But it's really interesting because of some of the obstacles, actually. So my background is, my father has been very much kind of the thing that has motivated me, because I grew up hearing like, girls can't do this, girls can't, like literally, like you would, if you were watching a TV show, he would be that character that you're just like, no one really talks like that. Like that's the stuff I heard. So in a way it gave me this drive, like I had something to prove, but that's not really sustainable over time. Like it's good for a certain amount. Like it definitely gave me this, like, I need to like win, and I have to, just accomplish these things. But then I was like, I don't think that's not what's really driving me. Like, what am I really here to do? Who am I? What's my mission? What drives me? Anyway, but some of the obstacles I remember, kind of going back to this whole thing, is an example of this would be Vine. I remember I got my first brand deal, and it was Oral-B, and they offered me $250. And I was like, great, that's amazing. I'll take it. Like, I was working like waitress gigs and babysitting. I was doing like everything to be a creative, you know? And so I did it for $250, and I thought it was amazing. And one of my guy friends was like, Julia, I did that same deal, same amount of followers. He's like, I did that deal for $5,000. And I'm like, what? And he taught me then and there how to negotiate. And so that kind of goes back into the mentors. It's like while I couldn't necessarily find representation that looked like me, luckily I had these other people who kind of showed up and were like, this is how you negotiate. This is how you write an email. This is how you are, you know, ask for what you want and be willing to walk away. And so that was really cool. And I think it is a different time now, but that was sort of my background in media. But yeah, so that's just what came up now. I'm sure there are many other obstacles that we've all had. But.
I think for me, growing up in the family that I have, I've got a father who played in the NBA. And at that point, when I started really hitting obstacles, I think both of my brothers were in the NBA at that point too. So, but even just with my dad growing up and being an athletic family, there was always the pressure of having to get a full ride scholarship to college and to even play basketball. And then when I decided to go into playing volleyball, my one goal was just like, I have to get a full ride to college. And then as soon as I did that, I worked my butt off for that. But as soon as I did that, I ended up getting first day of practice of my college career, tearing my patella. And so I had to redshirt that whole year. And that was just kind of such a mental thing for me because I'm competitive, and going into every situation, I want to like be the best and I want to make an impact right away. And then further along in my volleyball career, I got my 5th concussion going into my 5th year. And that's when the obstacles really started, because in my mind, I thought I had a whole other year to play volleyball, to figure out what I wanted to do with my life after college. And my whole goal was to go maybe play overseas for a little while. But after getting that 5th concussion, that was wiped off the table and not even an option anymore. So then I want to be a psychologist, but I hadn't taken any of the pre-master's tests to get my master's, and I hadn't prepared for that. And that's when I really started going through like my whole mental health journey. That's when that started, because I had 5 concussions. I was dealing with an abusive relationship all throughout college. And college is you guys know, it's a big time for change and finding out who you are, what your purpose is, what your place is in this world. And for me, just being an athlete and just thinking about all I was as an athlete, and then that being taken away from me, just one day during practice, it's kind of like, okay, who am I? Like, what am I supposed to do? And then that's when I ran to social media, because we're all into social media. That's just kind of what our generation and the generations to come will be into. And that's when I learned that my obstacle really began to be my purpose as well. Because when I went to look on social media for someone that was talking about something other than highlights of their life, something other than, oh, I'm going on vacation, or, oh, I'm going to this cool place and look what I'm doing here and there, I was looking for someone that could be real, and that also I could relate to as far as my own mental health, depression, anxiety. And I couldn't find anyone that was doing that. And I had a platform at that point, had no idea what to do with it on Instagram, but I'm a full believer in nothing, everything happens for a reason, and using that. And so I then took my obstacles and poured it into my current career. And that is to, just like I said, start the conversation around mental health, being vulnerable in ways that so uncomfortable, kind of cringy sometimes, but I feel like not only is it pouring into my life, but it's also helping other people to know that they're not alone. So just the obstacle in myself and my mental health, and dealing with ups and downs and highs and lows of life that everybody goes through, and trying to figure out who you are. And maybe you thought you figured it out, but here I am 25 years later, and I'm like, okay, I kind of know what I want to do. I still kind of don't, but going through that and knowing that it's not end all be all, that we can still kind of figure it out as we go. Those are probably my biggest obstacles. And then realizing that the pressure that I have, or that I put on myself for who my family is and what people expect of me, is not, it's from the outer. It's not coming from internal. So I shouldn't worry about what other people are thinking or what other people are saying, because they're not having to live my life every day. So it's really just kind of listening and reminding myself that every single day.
I want to jump in and say I love Sydel's vulnerability, and I follow her Instagram, and there's a power in it and a helpfulness in it. I really appreciate that. I think, Danny, your question was about like what kind of obstacles we've overcome in our careers. And as I sit here and think about it, all of the obstacles I've faced have come from the inside. It's like self-doubt or fear or wonder, like, can I move across the country? Can I be away from my family? Am I ready for this opportunity? So it's just that little voice inside me. It has not been coupled by outside forces holding me down. I mean, I agree with the idea that you can't be what you can't see. And I do acknowledge there aren't a whole lot of women in sports, but it's getting better. But the women who are there look like me. They are blonde white women. I mean, I thank you, quarantine. I used to be, I used to be blonde. So I have always seen myself represented, and that's not the case for other people. There is a staggering lack of diversity in media. And I had my high school newspaper teacher, kind of taught us this, that there are certain narratives that start to rise. He was also the history teacher, so this was like a cool intersection. He's like, all right, class, there's maybe 25 of us. I was like, I want you guys to capture what your class is like. Tell me your start to finish, really pour in those details. We are sharing this history for all time. So we all took our time. We had like 30 minutes to write this stuff. We took some care. And then he took those 25 papers and he walked up to the front of the class. He shuffled them around, he closed his eyes, he picked 3 of them. And then he took the other papers and put them in the trash. And he held up the 3 and he said, this is history. This is what we're going on. You need to recognize that there are times when history is only a partial account, or it's a favored account by people who are powerful, by people who have money, by people who look white, by people who have the interest in making one kind of narrative. So it just reminds me, like, we can't tell only one type of story. We have to question what we know as story, the stories that we see in media, who's reporting these kind of things, what kind of interests do they have? Everybody needs to have a seat at the table so all of history is told, the full picture is told. So I think if I'm going to take up space in media, I need to make sure I'm doing my best to tell the whole story. And that includes educating myself and really making sure that, do I know enough? Am I sympathizing enough with people? Do I understand different walks of life to tell their stories? Because there's like an obligation to tell these stories, and there's a trust involved, and I want to be a trustworthy person.
Thanks, Gareth, and thank you, everybody.
Hey everyone. So we have a follow-up question that we like to ask. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. So we were wondering, if throughout your experiences and your journeys, how have you recognized or ways that you've recognized your privilege and figure out what you can do with the advantages or privileges that you had?
I can start with that one. I have a very visible job. So when people reach out to me, students, people in the industry, I hope it is my duty to open doors for them, to make introductions. You just want to help. I want to go back to something Julia said about the competition. Looking around, sometimes I'll be the only woman in a room, and I need to recognize what that must feel like for a Black woman or a Latina woman or an Asian woman or a Native woman who are dealing with like the twofold, not only sexism, but also racism. How can I make sure I'm not in competition with other women, but comrades with other women? Early on in my career, I would say I was very ambitious, but it kind of took a toxic turn, it was like, why does she have that job? I know I can do that, but I didn't recognize the work. So I had to deal with some jealousy. I needed to learn where to aim my ambition. And now that I've arrived at a place where I'm extremely happy, how do I bring other people along with me? How do we make this a collective and help each other?
Thank you, Kira.
Yeah, I think to build off that. So I ended up through social media, I've ended up doing a lot of consulting jobs, and I became the creative director as a consultant for a company called Founder Made, and I end up basically consulting them on the types of panels to host. They have 2 main events a year, well, pre-pandemic, 2 main events a year. And so I not only kind of consult about the topics of the panels, but I actually book all of the speakers. And I went to one of their events for the first time in 2018, I believe. And I remember looking and thinking, this is really white. Like, I just noticed that, and there actually were a lot of women on these panels, but I noticed that in that moment. And I brought it up to the CEO, and she goes, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay. So, do you want to just book all the speakers from now on? I'm like, yeah, I would love to. And it was really interesting because there was something about that when I remember there's actually a deadline, and they said, we need to book all the speakers by the end of the week. And I was like, I'm not. And they had this roster of people that they had already had at previous events and over the 5 years. And I was like, I'm sorry, this just isn't this. I cannot put my name behind this anymore because I don't feel comfortable with the diversity that I'm seeing. I think it needs to be more. And I, that was something that I felt I put my foot down, and I stood very firmly in that. And that also comes from the being willing to walk away and me saying at the end of the day, like, if they don't want to work with me after this, that's totally fine. And trusting that, I think when I was younger, kind of around college age, I took every opportunity thinking it would be like the last, and I needed it. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that at the end of the day, I have to feel good about what, do I really believe in this? And if not, I will walk away. And then you learn over time that the right opportunities and jobs and people do come in as long as you're in that place. So that's one example. But I think the other thing is really educating. When quarantine started, I actually watched Mrs. America, and it helped me gain even more perspective as to how, it was the first time I learned about Shirley Chisholm, and I'm like, of course we don't learn about these things in history. I didn't, learn about, I don't know if you've seen Self-Made, but the first self-made millionaire in America was an African-American woman who is like can I swear here? She's a rock star. I'll just say that. She's a rock star. And I'm like, this would have been so cool to learn. And it's just, I think, going and learning these things, like, understanding why there was some tension, like that maybe I'll make less than a white male executive, but still, yes, there will be a Black woman or a Hispanic woman that will make even less than me. And so it's like, how do I take that knowledge, and like, it's not just about, we're all in this together. And I truly feel that. So yeah, education. And then when you do have a platform or you do have some sort of power, it's like using that to really move that forward, no matter what, and being willing to walk away if that's not where you're going to, be able to make change. It's like, well, where can I make change? I'm finished.
Thanks, Julia. Christian, I think you had a question.
Yeah, so this question comes from our Zoom chat. This comes from Juliana. And her question is, how do you maintain your mental health while navigating current conversations about racism and other discrimination, and/or trying to educate yourselves? And this goes out to all the panelists.
Well, that's a really tricky one, because I think we're all dealing with that right now, trying to manage the load of information that we're all obtaining, and then putting it into action, and then also feeling the emotions that come from that. A lot of this is social media based, news based, where we're getting all this type of information. And so it's super important to be able to recognize your feelings, recognize the different, even like physical feelings you get when you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, you know, fast heart, I shake a lot, my brain just going everywhere. Just being able to recognize those things, and then just telling yourself that it is okay to take a break, because you're not going to do any help if you're just not thinking straight. You're just overly stimulated. Like, it's not going to work out as best as you want to. So being okay with saying, all right, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take this much time or this week off of social media, not look at the news, and be okay with that. Don't feel the pressure of the whole world and trying to carry a load on your back, because there's a million other people, a billion other people in this world who really should be helping spread news and information and be accomplices. And there's a lot of people. You're not the only one that's going to make a difference. So if you're feeling like you're overwhelmed, you're anxious, you're just mentally weak, it's okay to take a break. Go do something that you know will make you feel better, and then return back when you're feeling more just calm and sound. Because I think that, like, I deal with that all the time. I'm like, I have this big platform. I have so many people I can reach. I can do so much. But what am I going to do if I'm like laying out like this, can't even move, because I'm just so overwhelmed and I just can't think. So I think that just not getting into the pressure of having to always be doing something, and to know that, and to know your limit, and to know, okay, be okay with what you've done, be okay with how much you've shared, how many people you've reached out to, people that you have been able to get through to. Because I know also that it can be extremely frustrating when you're trying to talk to someone about justice and racism, and they're fighting back at you every time you like make a point, and they're like, oh, but what about this? Well, that can get so frustrating. And it's okay to just take a step back and take care of yourself, because if your glass is empty, you can't pour into anyone else's.
That was a great point that Sydel made there. And she's way more of the expert on mental health and everything like that than I am. But I think an important thing is, regardless of whether everybody's going through different challenges as far as understanding themselves mentally during this space. And we're in a great time right now where mental health and mental awareness is something that's being brought up more regularly. You know, I think we all kind of grown up from different paths and different backgrounds where mental healthness, or making sure that you are in a good space, was something that was overlooked. It was like, you got to fight through, push on, keep dealing, and just deal with it. And especially as Black people, we kind of go through life just having to deal with things. And we don't realize how much of a factor and how much of a weight and a burden that accumulates over time. And I think especially we're seeing that now with so much going on with the response to racial injustice. You reach a boiling point after a while. If you don't have platforms, if you don't have outlets to be able to release and talk about things that are impacting you, we get to this point now where now it turns into rage, and it turns into anger, because it's a buildup. And we all know the systemic history of slavery and racism for 400 plus years. All that takes a toll, and it weighs on each generation as we move on. At the beginning of this quarantine, I saw this quote came about. It was like a meme that popped up. And it was something along the lines, it's not exactly, but it was somewhere along the lines of, if after this quarantine you don't have your business lined up, or if you don't have all your goals accomplished or something like that, you never lacked time, you lacked discipline, something like that, right? And it was really interesting because I break down a lot of different neurological things, scientific things in different ways, and try to give introspective logic. And I remember that quote hit me in a unique way, just as an entrepreneur and somebody that's really driven and always like setting goals and checking things off. Like, that motivated me. I was like, okay, cool. This is the time now. Everything's kind of cool, calm down. I have more time to invest in my ideas and be able to be, I'm a creative mind. I can put all those different lists of things that I haven't had a chance to get to. Now it's the time to execute. Go, 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 right? That was my mentality, because that's just naturally how I'm built. But I saw there was an intrinsic counter response to that, where people are like, damn, I can't respond that way. Like, you expect me now to have a business plan together. You expect me to do all these different things. People are faced with all these burdens. This quarantine put us in positions now where parents, everyday families had to become educators now, teaching their kids because there's no school to go to, people losing their jobs, all these different things now that have been attributed to being in this quarantine have now taken a toll. And then especially now you add the whole factor of racial injustice and watching people that look like us getting killed on national TV, all these different things, and then having the weight of having to speak on behalf of everybody, or having to feel the burden of now we have to speak up and people wanting us to know what we have to say in conjunction with what's already going on right now with everybody being a pandemic and being locked down. You can imagine just the mental toll and the burden that it takes. And so I think the first key is recognizing that weight, especially as we talk about allies and different things like that, for allies to understand that that burden is already upon us. And so the expectation of, oh, what do you have to say, or tell us about this, or how can we, like, you got to understand that we're dealing with a cumulative amount of different things that are affecting us day to day. And so I think the first key is recognition, understanding that mental health affects everybody differently, and then being able to understand everybody as an individual, and then also not adding the extra burden of putting other things now that are going to set more weight on them than what we're already dealing with. And so I really think that's a key to, got to understand yourself individually as a person, how things affect you, and then also be able to now take that into the people that you're dealing with and understand how that could impact them in a different way.
Really great answers. Thank you so much. Any other panelists want to add on? Okay, Darren, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, some really great points were made in all of your responses so far. I wanted to follow up with the question, what do you guys think can be implemented so that students of color have a space all year round to discuss social justice issues, and what ways can we make these conversations become more normalized on our campuses?
So for me, I went to a PWI, I went to Elon University. So we had our, I'm literally blanking on the name right now, but it was basically like a literal building for Black students to go to. And that's kind of where we went. But I mean, it was fine and all, but I think one thing that was very helpful, I actually talked to a few of my white college teammates about this a few weeks ago. And we were telling, my two friends and I were telling them about our experiences at a PWI, and it just became apparent to me that we had not hidden them, but we never talked about them to our white friends, just because, like, one, we're trying to like make sure nothing gets uncomfortable, or make, like, one, we don't want them to feel bad or anything like that, and things that they were kind of our fault. We shouldn't have had to protect them from what we go through, because it's important for them to see that and for them to recognize that. So I think I like using the word accomplice instead of ally, because accomplices, they go down with you, and allies are kind of like, if sometimes if they see you go down, they're like, okay, like, I see you, I'm gonna stay over here. But accomplices, like, if they're in it with you, and we're gonna go through this together all the way to the very end. So I think for a student, and maybe students are the most important part of a university, because they're everywhere and there's more students than there are of anybody else. So I think that if you're a white student and you're wanting to be an accomplice for a Black student or an Asian student or a Hispanic student, be willing to and open to hearing their stories and to listen and to respond, or maybe even not respond. Just let them know that you hear what they're saying and you understand what they're going through. Because if they're not really hearing it from you, they're not going to think anything's going on. And it's not really our job to protect them. And so the same way I bring everything around to mental health, because I live that every day, but it's the same way as if you're trying to help someone that's going through something like a mental illness, they may not be ready to talk about it, but just let them know that you're there, you're a presence in their life to come to them whenever they're ready. So in the same way, as a white student, I think it's really important just to let your, I can't think of the word right now, but your Black friends or your Hispanic friends or whatever, that if there's anything that's going on, that they can come to you, or you can come to them and talk about it, so that they don't feel like they're alone, that they're not hiding really important parts of their life, because it can be really difficult. Like we went as a Black student at a PWI, I heard some crazy things that I just like, I never thought that like people still say stuff like this, like what? And so when they're able to really see what you're going through, then they can go to their friends that may be doing that, or people that they know who are saying outrageous things, and be able to explain to them, because they'll understand it better from someone that looks like them than from us who it seems like we're just complaining about everything and we're sensitive and yada yada yada. So I think that university wise, they should just make that more of a open and normal thing to talk about if it ever happens.
I'll add on that too, especially, and I want to focus a little bit on specifically, here at colleges, different things that we can do. I think the key is to normalize this, right? Because we're having these discussions now in the wake of all these incidents that have taken place. And it shouldn't take a series of incidents and a global catastrophe for us to have these conversations as mainstay. Like, these are things that we should continuously have. And one thing that always was surprising me, and something that I've always kind of talked about too, we have different platforms, right? Like National Society of Black Engineers, you have SHIP, and you have other organizations that are geared towards, minorities and us being able to be around our peers and different things like that. And we, in those groups and those organizations, we always have had talks about diversity and different things that are impacting us. But the problem was that we were having that conversation amongst ourselves. We didn't have our white peers in that same room, right? And so I've been involved with NSBE for years. And for as long as I can remember, we've had national conventions, we've had meetups, we've had events going on, and we've all talked about the plight of not seeing engineers and not seeing other scientists that look like us in our fields and ways that we can navigate and everything like that. But we never had white people in those rooms. And that's the problem, right? We need to make this a normal thing, and this needs to be a thing that everybody realizes and everybody can be a part of. And so I think one key thing is definitely organizations that are based around minority groups. Obviously, we have ourselves within those groups as a supportive foundation, but we also need to find ways that we can open up those platforms to now we're having these discussions within everybody, which is why it's great to have this panel, because we have a diverse group of people here of all sorts of different backgrounds, and I'm sure all sorts of different backgrounds that are tuning in right now, hearing the discussion. And I was involved in the panel a couple weeks ago where we had a lot of white allies or accomplices. So I like that. I like the accomplice term. That's really ideal, actually, because we're all in it together. And so the point is that we all need to be in partnership. We all need to be in unity, and we all need to understand the trials and tribulations that we're all dealing with. And so it's important that we have a representation of everybody in those spaces when we have these conversations, so that now we can really set that precedence for change.
Really great answer. I'm all motivated now. Happy to be an accomplice. Kareth, Julia, did you have anything to add?
I mean, I guess I remember at Washington State University, go Cougs, Maynard. That was a very white school. And
no!
Yeah, I know. The athletes were a minority on campus. Most of the Black folks were athletes. And so they had to deal with those jokes like, I know why you're here, not going to class, right? And that sucked. And my friends on those teams would say it was so valuable to have a space where they could go by themselves, like a Black student lounge, and just exhale away from the people who are centered all of the time to find a people. So I think it's important to have those groups. And then, as Maynard said, most importantly, once those groups are strong and established and they know that they have a place where they are valued and listened to, then you start bringing in other people. So there's a dialogue here. So there's like a cross reference. There's like all sorts of experience and understanding happening. Because when you are a minority on campus, you must be aware of like the power structure all the time. So the people in power need to do their part to understand what the experiences are like for minorities on campus. This has to be a two-way street.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one last question before we break off. It's gonna be a really long, multi-pronged one, but Kareth, you mentioned earlier about the importance of history, and I kind of wanted to ask to everybody, since educating ourselves is so important, did you have any books, podcasts, personal experiences that you want to share that really shaped your perspective on racial justice, or and the true nature of this country?
I think I've been very lucky to have good teachers. I think being in journalism and especially covering sports, you have to be aware of the stories of other people. You have to believe them. They're opening themselves up to you, so you better listen. I don't want to say like there was this thing, like I don't want to treat awareness and empathy as like a self-help kind of thing. It's like, you can't go like, I'm an ally, I'm done, I'm one of the good ones, right? Like to ally needs to be a verb, it needs to be a set of actions, right? Like it's the starting point. So I am continuing on that journey.
Thanks, Carrie. Anyone else want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think just for me, the best education I've had has been just directly asking my friends. I sort of have like like someone who's taken me under his wing in LA in the music world and sort of been like my surrogate dad, if that's a thing. It's been sort of like a stand-in dad, and he happens to be this brilliant, charismatic Black man, and I have dinner there almost every week. Well, again, pre-pandemic, and I've just learned so much from just listening to stories at the dinner table and seeing the different subtle ways that I experience. And I'll make this specific to African American, just because I think that's what is personally. I think that's where I want to put my attention into solving that level of systemic racism now, because then it umbrellas across the board. And just sort of learning from my friends, and again, taking note of the differences in treatment, being willing to, as far as my own privilege, just being like, I know that right now, if I went outside, like I'm in Utah right now. While I grew up in New York and I'm in California most of the time, and I road tripped here, I know if I was a Black woman, I would be looked at differently just walking around here in a more conservative state. And that, being willing to admit that is what, on top of the empathy, is what really drives me to learn, like, well, like you are all of the future. I mean, I try to do what I can. I try to learn, and I try to share it on my social media. I share my other friends' stories, but you and your youth and your ability to tap into resources that I didn't have that you have now. Like, I've been learning so much on TikTok. I'm like, hold on, let me go watch some 15-year-olds tell me about like American history. But like you have the power to actually continue to learn and then do the things that are needed at like the local politics level, and to, tell the full range of history. And so I'm so excited, honestly, about you, all you students, and just putting something together, and how I have a lot of faith that that's going to be where a lot of the change comes from. So that was a really long way of saying that a lot of just, firsthand experience and putting myself in situations where I can just learn from people who are going through it, and asking hard questions and being willing to sit and hold space and just be like, cool, I'll never fully understand, but like, I got you. And just like, I'll be doing my part. Accomplice. I love that. We're going down together, but we're going up. We're rising.
I was going to just say something real quick. I guess my direct answer to the question is no, but my indirect response, which I think kind of ties into this discussion particularly, is really understanding the connection between racism, systemic racism, and everything else within our fields, right? There's kind of been this whole push of like, oh, you got to keep racial injustice and politics out of science, or out of sports or out of these things, right? But I think the important thing that we all need to realize is all of these are intrinsically attached together. You can't have sports without racial injustice. You can't have discussions within science without talking about racism. They're all involved. And I've had to specifically deal with this as a science communicator and different things I talk about, because I follow a lot of different science communicators that have platforms that talk about physics or space travel and all these different things, right? And even with sports, people look at sports as an outlet, like, oh, it's my release, it's my chance to get away from everything. but you can't hold all these things individually. They all have a connection to each other. So there's been such a push of people being like, oh no, as for science communicators, oh, stick to talking about space, stick to talking about physics or engineering or the fun science stuff that you always talk about. That's why I'm here following your channel. I don't want to hear about social injustice or Black Lives Matter. And then within sports too, it's like, oh, stick to playing sports, or, you know, those shut up and dribble type of movement, right? I think the important thing that we all need to realize is you can't have any of these without each other. Racism, racial injustice, sports, science, all these have factors into them. And even myself, I've been learning so much more talking to other black doctors specifically about studies and tests that have been done over generations that have impacted Black communities, and even studies that don't include us or different things like that, or research studies that have been used by us but don't really reflect or engage or really help us in different medical fields. And then even within sciences, I've been with the movement of Black Birders Week and Black people in nature, understanding the impact that we have when we go out and explore the outdoors and how we're looked upon differently. And so you can't have all these different platforms without dealing with all these other transgressions that are going on in life. And so I think it's important for everybody to realize that these spaces all have an attachment to each other, and that we can't look at them separately, that they're all inclusive when we're having topics about racial injustice and racism.
Great. Thank you for all your answers. And then we're running a little bit low on time, but I just wanted to ask everybody, do you have any closing statements? And I do have an order that I want to stick by so there's no confusion. So Julia, do you want to start with a closing statement?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
no, it's okay. It's okay. Maynard, I love that point that you just made, and I'm here to learn, and it's so true how much it's all tied together. So again, kind of just going back to what I said, while we all have a huge responsibility, I'm hoping that I start to see more representation that truly to me represents a diverse America. And whether that's through politics or leadership positions. And I'm really excited and hopeful for the future and what you and all of your classmates will bring. It seems like you have amazing supportive professors, and I'll just end it with Black Lives Matter.
Thanks, Julia. Maynard, do you have anything to close out with?
I would like to speak specifically all the students out here. I feel like you guys are in a position right now that's very unique, right? I always reflect back on my college days, and college was such a growth period for me. It was a chance for me to learn more about myself. I built some of my best relationships, lifelong relationships that I have right now from people that I met in college. And that's where you kind of build that strong foundation, because after you leave college, you go into the real world and you have all these other obstacles and different things that you have to deal with. But college sets you up in a very unique way to prepare you for that. And then to kind of open up your eyes and to be able to be around other people from all sorts of different backgrounds from all across the world, depending on what college you're at. And so you guys are in a unique position right now to be able to have this community and to be able to have all these opportunities around you. And you're now going to be setting the wave for generations to come, especially for professionals entering your fields. A lot of you are going to be graduating or graduated this year or will be graduating soon and going off into your different professions. And you guys are in a unique position, especially having, discussions like this with takeaways of now what can you do as far as actionable steps to be more diverse when you go out and you interacting with different communities. You guys now have the tools and you have the ability right now to be able to set that precedence for whenever you guys go into your lines of work, whether it's you starting up a business, if you're in the startup tech world or something like that, ways that you can be able to identify how you can start up your business from a more diverse perspective and making sure that you have Black representation, other minority representation in your leadership positions, making sure that you now have the tools to be able to hold your future jobs accountable for making sure that they have representation in leadership. How now we can work on retention and making sure that when we do get minorities or people into these businesses that we're getting involved in, how do we keep them there and how do we amplify their voices, and how do these issues with racial injustice and racism all tie into our career paths and our career journeys. And so I think it's very important for you guys to take advantage of this moment, take advantage of the tools and the resources that you have right now, because I'm always a big believer that, you know, you start off our youth early, getting them into the STEM fields, and then you work on that retention as you grow up. And then by the time you get into college, now you kind of have a better perspective and you have a better feel for different things. So you guys are in a good place right now to be able to spark that new change and be the leaders and become the future STEM leaders that we all need in order to have an influence on how America is going to be in the future.
Thanks, Maynard. Kareth?
Maynard's point about sticking to sports is rattling in my head, or the folks who want scientists to just stick to space or whatever it is. You can't unsew the humanity of the people doing these things from their experiences, right? I feel like I'm tired of the oxygen being sucked out of the room in these conversations. Like somebody who says, just stick to sports, doesn't want to value the people that they're watching on the screen, the athletes that they love. And so I think that's an argument to just stick your head in the sand and ask everybody else to give you a safe space from real problems. It can't happen. So beware of those people, find your accomplices, and do your best to speak out about that and decide where you want the oxygen to go.
Perfect. And Sydel, go ahead and finish this off.
All right. I would just say, I think one of the main things we can do as human beings is just empathize with people and put yourself in another person's shoes. Empathy can go a very long way. It can do a lot for a lot of people. So empathize, I think prioritize your mental health 100%. I feel like you can't grow, you can't be who you really want to be unless you prioritize yourself and your mental health. So whether if that's getting a therapist, if that's taking time just to step away from really deep things, do that for sure. And don't be afraid to speak up and to speak out about things that you think are wrong, because you can start that fire. You can whatever company you end up going to or company you start, like Maynard was saying, you can be the person, the driving force for change. And I'm actually very excited for you guys. I remember being in your shoes and thinking that the world is out there for me to go get, and it is. So don't ever forget that. And I'm really excited for you guys' future and so proud of you guys for being involved in this.
Thanks, Sydel. And thank you, everybody, for making the time today from your busy schedules to join us from across the country, and for sharing your stories and helping us further the conversation on such important issues in such an important time in our history. And thank you, everyone from SCU and across the world for tuning in. This event has been recorded and will be posted soon on our website. I also want to thank all of the volunteers today, including all my fellow moderators, all the faculty and staff who help support this. Ricky, thank you so much. And please mark your calendars to join again on Thursday, August 13th at 6 p.m. BDT for our next live panel discussion featuring engineer, actor, and co-founder of Seekers of Science Comics, Tamara Robertson, actor, director, and musician, Tim Russ, attorney and affordable housing development lawyer in New York City, Fazila Siddiqui, and owner of DAD Sewing House, CEO of O2 Nanomasks, Rebecca Rosario Cahua. Please help spread the word and be on the lookout for some promotional material. Reminder to all the students on the call, if you're interested in speaking more with our panelists, remember to join us on the Zoom shortly after the conclusion of the event. Since we're rubbing kind of close to the 7 o'clock mark, we'll start at 7:05 instead of 7, just to give everyone a little break to get some water, go to the bathroom, and cool down. And the Zoom link was shared. Everyone who's in this call, it's the same call. You don't have to leave or go anywhere. To the general public watching our live stream, I want to leave you with this. There's a history of oppression, racism, brutality, and white supremacy in this nation and in this world. However, there are steps we can all take moving forward to turn our words and thoughts into actions to rid our society of these practices. I think our panelists have done a great job of hinting the various ways in which we can do this, and I inspire you and I encourage you all to sit and think about these things and think about how you can implement them into your daily life. And I'm just going to leave you with one quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., specifically focused on this, and which is, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. So every time you get a chance to help out people who are in need, to help out our Black brothers and sisters, please remember to do so. It might feel awkward sometimes, but really your lack of silence makes all the difference. So that's what I'll leave you with. I'll see you all on August 13th. Good night.